Gaza medics are concerned about the possibility of discovering relatives among victims in Khan Yunis, Palestinian Territory. A Palestinian nurse from Khan Yunis in the Gaza Strip shares their fears for seeing relatives injured or dead at the hospital, adding that a nurse who discovered her relative was killed feels obliged to continue her work in helping injured individuals.
جاءت اليوم وأنا جاي على شغلي باستشهاد خالتي وابنها وزوجها. بناتها 3 مصابين، ابنها مصاب برضه. لما شفتهم انهرت وتعبت، بس لازم راح أضل مستمرة بشغلي، وحكون إن شاء الله هذا بيكون أقوى إن شاء الله من هيك.
وبعد نص ساعة من التعامل مع الإصابات الكاملة بتفاجئ إنه زميلي إلي بيقول لي البيت اللي مقصوف بيت أختك. بيت أختي كيف؟ طب وين أختي؟ وين إصابات أختي؟ بقول لي أختك وأولادها وزوجها شهداء، فأنت اللي شفته إصابات هذول العائلة المجاورة للبيت، أما البيت ما ضل ولا واحد فيه كلهم شهداء. فأنا صابتني الصدمة بشكل كبير ومش عارف إيش أعمل. الإسعاف بقول لي تحت الأنقاض ضايلين، وفي إسعاف بقول لي أخذنا شهداء منهم ورحت على المشرحة. فمباشرة رحت على المشرحة من كثر ما هم يعني أشلاء مش قادر أتعرف عليهم. والله إحنا شغلنا في المستشفى بتخاف إحنا إنه يجي ابنك زوجتك أبوك وأمك. أنا تفاجأت بأختي، كل مرة جاءت فجأة مثلا بابني أو بأختي أو مثلا أو بأبوي أو بأمي. فالأمر والله صعب، يعني صار الأحداث اللي بتصير عنا بتأثر علينا في النوم عقلك دائما شغال.
And of course, to shed more light on this, I'm joined on the news at this time by Mustafa Fetouri, a Libyan academic and journalist from Tripoli, Libya. Thank you so much for your time, Mustafa.
A pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, great. Let's get to it. Now, Israel has heavily bombarded Gaza since Hamas gunmen stormed across the border on the 7th of October, killing about 1,400 people, mostly civilians, and kidnapping over 200 others. Now, according to Israeli officials. Now, this reaction in several quarters is that Israel's response has been disappropriate. What is your take on this?
Yeah, it's very clear. I mean, the Israeli reaction has been very disproportionate, and when you react with disproportionate force to counter an attack, you are also violating the international law and the Geneva Conventions of the humanitarian laws that are effective and must be observed in situations of war. That's one thing. The other thing, the Israeli launched into this war on the 7th, immediately after the Hamas resistance attack inside Israel, without actually telling the world or the Israeli population itself what are the goals and objectives of this war and what are the political end of this war. Every war, as you know, has some kind of political objective to be achieved afterwards. So what is it that Mr. Netanyahu and his war cabinet are seeking? It's becoming increasingly clear there is no political end for this. I mean, there's no set or planned or precise Israeli political objective behind the war. What is really clearly becoming increasingly the fact that the Israeli army and the Israeli government wants to kill as many Palestinians as possible and destroy much of Gaza, as it has been doing for the last 20 days, and probably make Gaza even smaller. Open prison than it used to be before.
All right, now let's talk about the United Nations now. Now, despite the UN's call, backed by several other nations for a humanitarian ceasefire, the Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, have launched a brief land incursion into Gaza in preparation for a major ground offensive. How can this current conflict be resolved?
It's quite difficult. I mean, the Israelis are making it difficult because if you go back into the 7th of October and what the Israeli military top leaders like the defense minister, for example, and the political leaders as like the prime minister, the main goal they set for this war, and they keep repeating it, was to eradicate Hamas. But Hamas is not an army. It does not have military barracks. It does not have tank battalions, does not have radar stations, does not have any surveillance equipments and centers of control of the battle. It's not an army. It's, in that sense, it's just a ghost army, if you like. So what does it mean in practical sense when you are trying to eradicate a ghost army? Actually, you are eradicating the civilians, the civilian population. You are killing them, as I mentioned before. So it's quite. I don't know what the Israelis, the ultimate goal of the Israelis is. They are attempting to force as many Gazans as possible out into Egypt, but that has failed. It's not going to work. And the only remaining thing is to kill them, because we heard after the few days of fighting, I think in the 9th or 10th of October, that the Israeli army ordered most of the residents, the entire residents of northern Gaza, to move to the south because it's safer. And then a few days later, they started bombing the south even more than they did with the north. So there was no safe place. How is it going to end? I don't see any visible way of ending it, because the end of any conflict is a political solution. And the only political solution to this ongoing conflict, it has been on for the last 75 years. It's not started the 7th of October. The only solution is for the Israelis to go back to the negotiating table and respect whatever obligations they make and whatever the international law says.
All right, I want to comment.
Israel has never respected any international law and has completely disregarded the entire 20 or so UN resolutions concerning the conflict. Yes.
Now, talking about laws, international laws, the health ministry in the Hamas-run Gaza Strip, in an update, said the strikes has now killed about over 7,000 people, mainly civilians, and many of them children. And of course, Israel's military is saying that Hamas is using hospitals in Gaza as operation centers for directing attacks. Now, how do we, of course, what do you make, number one, of the accusation by the Israeli military saying that Hamas is using hospitals as operation bases for attacks? And also, what do you make of these figures that the health ministry is saying concerning deaths that, of course, have been recorded?
You know, we also have to keep in mind that the United Nations itself, the relevant department of the United Nations, has described what Israel is doing as a war crime, because it's killing civilians, it's bombing houses, bombing hospitals. I think what the Israelis claim about the Shifa hospital, for example, it's just a lie. It's not the first time they lie, of course. How could the Hamas fighters, resistance fighters, hide in the hospital when at the same time there's about 40,000 civilians who are seeking refuge there because it's one of the very few safe places? The Israelis are trying to justify their upcoming attack in the hospital itself. So it's a complete lie. I never believed this, and then I wish the Israelis can provide publicly, publish the information they claim to have intelligence sources inside Gaza.
But they actually did do a presentation. They had like a model to just sort of prove their point, even though they said that the model is not the actual representation of the intelligence they gathered, I guess, for security reasons.
Because they don't have the actual one. They don't have it. It's just a lie. And they want the public to believe what they are saying without any proof. They don't have such a proof. How could
We actually did show it earlier on in the
fighters.
news anyway.
Let me just ask this simple question, my friend. How could armed fighters hide in a hospital when at the same time there's around 40,000 civilians, families, children, old men, young people staying there besides on top of the patients who are getting some treatment there, which is very rare anyway, or very lacking anyway. So how could they do that? I mean, we know Hamas has tunnels, probably under the entire area of Gaza, but that does not justify that does not make the Israeli claim that they are using the Shifa hospital as a control command center is a fact.
Well,
That's
on the screen there is of course the presentation by the Israeli military chief there trying to show what their intelligence has gathered, even though they claimed it's not the actual representation. But before I let you go, what's your take moving forward? How do you think this issue can be solved? And particularly, how do we allow for ceasefire and the movement of humanitarian aid? Briefly, in less than 30 seconds, please.
Even the European Union, the entire European Union, and of course, following in the footsteps of the United States, which is an ally of Israel and supporting Israel in every possible way, they are not calling for a ceasefire. They have called for pauses, not a pause, what could mean a ceasefire or longer ceasefire. But they're saying a few hours here and there, a few hours in a couple of days, and that could allow for the supplies of medicine and food and water.
All right, Mustafa Fetouri.
To go into Gaza.
I'm sorry, I may just have to interject here and allow you go, but thank you so much for your time. Libyan academic and journalist from Tripoli, Libya. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.